My name's Dr. Henry Irving, and I'm the Communications Secretary for the Social History Society. And it's my pleasure to announce the result of our 2020-2021 Pam Cox Public History Prize. And the winner, who is Dr. Alice Sage, recently doctored, just been through the Viva, is joining me now. Hello, Alice.
Hi.
Hi. And you submitted a wonderful application for a project called Photographing Fairies, which was a sort of exploration of the 100th anniversary of the Cottingley Fairy story. I just wonder if you could start out by telling us a little bit about the project.
Yeah, so it's an online exhibition that's hosted at Stills, which is a photography gallery in Edinburgh. And initially, the exhibition was to mark the 100th anniversary of the Cottingley Fairy photographs that were first published in December 1920. Due to COVID, we were a few months late, so it launched in February 2021. And over the previous year, we'd been working on the exhibition with a group of young people from Edinburgh Young Carers and the Multicultural Family Base. And we were working with girls and non-binary young people aged about 12 to 14, because my question, I suppose, when I set out was, what would young people today think of these Cottingley Fairy photographs? And they're so famous and so notorious, but I wondered what would their take be on it 100 years later. And back in late 2019, what seemed relevant about them was their fakeness and the question of fake news and fake images. And then as the project went on, the significance and the resonances changed, and it was really interesting to try and shape an exhibition and a creative history project during the COVID pandemic and bring out new resonances between these photographs and our current experience.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about COVID in a moment, but if I could just take you back maybe to 2019, because I mean, the Public History Prize, it recognises at the time a doctoral student or an early career researcher who sort of takes their research and does something different with it, kind of puts it into the public domain. So could you just say a little bit more about how this research relates to your own PhD?
Yeah, so my PhD title is Fairies, Fathers and Fantasies of Childhood in London, 1915 to 1930. So what I've been researching is representations of childhood, particularly in performance in those last years of the First World War, and particularly in the 1920s. And of course, I was thinking about the Cottingley Fairies, and I have a big proportion of my thesis is thinking about fairies and ideas of littleness and fantasies of hope and consolation in the aftermath of the war. And so I talk about the Cottingley Fairies, but really my research is a microhistory of one particular group of children in East London. So I didn't really have opportunity to write and to think about the Cottingley images, which I wanted to do. So for me, this project was a way to take the themes of my thesis research and to use those to think through these very famous and public images, and hopefully in a new way. And again, like I was saying, I was interested in what young people now would think about them, which is obviously something that doesn't come into my thesis research, which is about what I think about these things.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the judges were really struck actually of the way that you injected a really contemporary resonance into those stories. And I really like the way in the booklet you describe these photographs as almost a sort of an example of viral social media. It's something which kind of takes off at that particular moment in time. I'm going to take you back though to COVID, because you sort of intimated that this had both a practical and a more theoretical kind of impact on the project and the way that unfolded. So could you just tell us a little bit more about kind of how doing all of this in lockdown changed the eventual outcome?
Yeah, it's a completely different project at the end than I set out to do. Initially, I was hoping to make a very object-rich exhibition in a completely different place at the Writers' Museum in Edinburgh, and um, the work with the young people was going to be a kind of complementary element in the project. But luckily, I'd managed to, because this whole project was part of my PhD, in an internship as part of my PhD through Chase, funded through Chase. And so that was the project that I had got funding for. And then we were all set on that, and I had the partners and things. And then obviously when COVID hit, the first time in March, I'd just got back from Bradford, where I'd gone to see the original Cottingley Fairy photographs and the cameras. And I was hoping to borrow them, and I was working on applications to get funding for them, for the loans. And so everything just shut down. All the people I was working with were on furlough, and it took a few months. And basically, what happened is I completely reshifted so that the engagement questions and this creative work with young people became the heart of the project. And the idea of negotiating loans and getting conservation work done was just impossible. Because it was part of an internship, I didn't have the option of delaying it. It had to happen. My funding was dependent on it. My PhD was dependent on it. So I was very lucky to be working with Stills and Morwenna Kearsley, the photographer, and together we kind of developed online workshops. We stuck with the same groups that we were working with, and we developed a way of working, doing photography and art workshops with all these young people in their homes. So we made up boxes filled with kind of scissors and glue and coloured paper, and I put in kind of like historical poems and photocopies of documents and stuff, and then drove all around Edinburgh, dropping them off at their houses like a fairy godmother. And then we met weekly on Zoom, and what was brilliant was just kind of creating this 1 hour a week where we could chat, make collages, think about what was happening to us while it was happening. And it really took the pressure off making, having an idea of what the exhibition was going to be like. We just had to do what we could in the moment. And that, I found that very difficult as someone who likes to kind of have very clear controller over my projects. But in the end, I think it was, like you said, like conceptually, it started to inform how I understood these historical documents and events. And I think has led to a stronger exhibition in the end, because it's much more relevant than just telling a story that happened 100 years ago. It really brought out why these images are relevant, and how Elsie and Francis were making images as a response to a crisis, which is exactly what we were doing.
What a fantastic resonance. And I mean, it's something that the judges definitely picked up on. I mean, I'm going to embarrass you now. I think one of the ideas that was really picked up was the resilience that you showed kind of in relation to all of that disruption, and the ability to continue to push the idea of co-creation. So those resource packs, I mean, I suppose they've made the project what it is. I mean, what was it like working with the young people? And obviously you're doing this remotely, but what kind of feedback were you getting from the youngsters that you were working with?
I mean, it was like really great. If you ever want to, to put things in perspective, like work with 12-year-old girls, because they, they're very honest about what they thought about the project and the Cottony Fairies and what they were interested in doing. And it was very interesting to be involved in their lives in a way that you wouldn't if they were just coming to a gallery and we were working with them in the gallery space, which is what we were hoping to do, and do darkroom workshops and lots of sophisticated Photoshop work. But in the end, what we ended up doing was very simple cut and stick stuff, because that's what we could do. And we were like in their homes with them. You could see their families in the background, and some of them don't have their own room or their own space, so they're working at the kitchen table, and that makes you much more aware of the challenges that they're facing to find an hour a week. So you don't want to waste their time. And there's videos in the exhibition, and of course I invite everyone to go and look at the exhibition, and there's videos where we've recorded at the end of the project their reflections on the work that they'd done, and we've put them more when I edited them into these lovely videos, so you get a real sense of their thoughts about it and what they enjoyed.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to put a link as well to the exhibition on the Social History Society website. Can I just ask a final question? And this is looking to the future now. So I mentioned that you've just had your Viva at the point that we're having this conversation. So I've officially got the doctorate. What next? And how do you think you might be able to build on this project in the future?
I think that this was a great opportunity for me to work digitally and to make an online exhibition, because previously I've made physical exhibitions, and this was a great opportunity to work in a completely different way. So that, I mean, it's been great for me for that. And so hopefully, I mean, that will be essential in my future work, I expect. So I mean, I'm sure everybody at the end of their PhD kind of feels both like, I never want to think about that again, and also there's still so many questions left that I want to investigate. So I have, there's a few projects that are kind of adjacent that I want to look at more ideas of fantasy, interwar photography, and so I'm working on some projects in those areas.
Well, I think you can also certainly celebrate, and on behalf of everybody in the Social History Society and the committee and the executive, I would just like to say a huge congratulations for winning this year's Public History Prize. It's very well deserved, and I believe that the postman has just arrived with your cheque as well. So in a sort of a very fortuitous circumstance, you can go away and celebrate today.
Thank you so much.